Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of the No ID podcast. Yes, this is season 4. You guys, I have expanded. It is me, Rome Davis, your host. I have a wonderful, wonderful guest here. You've seen her maybe on Instagram. You maybe see her on Twitter a few times. She is a pro dominatrix, antagonist, alter ego, therapist by day, Dom before Don. One and only Venus Feroci. Say hello to the people.
Thank you for having me. Hello, guys. Thank you for having me. So let's get into it.
So how did you get your start?
How did I get started? Well, I would say I became like a full-time Dom about a year ago. I was working in Upper West Side as a program director, and I started to get back into sex work to kind of make some extra cash. And then eventually I started to kind of build up a clientele. And I would say when I started to make, what I was making in 2 weeks, when I started to make that in a day, I started to plan the get out, I guess you can say my exit from the corporate world or my current occupation. And ever since then, I've never went back. I do therapy, I do private practice, but outside of that, for the most part, I'm just a dominatrix, pro dom, full time.
See, the question I have, we was talking earlier for the people that's out there, I had a whole conversation about kink, and I've watched some of your Instagram stories. I've been on your Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. And it seems like you got a lot of insight about kink. I know it was one thing up there, about rimming.
Oh, right? Yeah.
If you feel comfortable enough, what is rimming, and how does that come about?
Well, rimming is just basically eating a man's ass. The term is, men in particular, I guess, use that term. It sounds more masculine. Rimming actually sounds pretty cool. But for a woman, you wouldn't say, I'm going to rim her ass. You're going to say, I'm going to eat your ass, right? Or toss your salad. But there are some men that do like rimming. I personally don't do rimming. But if someone wanted to rim me, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But I don't let men rim me in my occupation. That's for personal use, so yeah.
So what kind of kinks or fetishes are in your professional use?
Yeah. I would say most of my kinks or the go-tos would definitely be feet worship. I do definitely do couples domination, but that's more along the kink therapy lines. I can probably get into that a little bit later. I do like FLRs, it's female-led relationship, or even TPEs, total power exchange, which is basically owning them, you run their life. It can happen under a certain amount of time frame. Let's say, for example, I don't know, this guy has 3 months off from his work. So let's say I go into his home, have him in a cage. I basically run him like a submissive 24/7. No, I have not done that in particular, but I've done it in little increments. So maybe it'll just be a day or whatever time we have together. And outside of that, a lot of the typical impact play, a lot of punishment, a lot of brainwashing, a lot of psychological play, blackmail, manipulation, all those type of things for the most part.
Okay, let's rewind. You said put them in a cage?
Yeah, a cage. Yes, cage. Mm-hmm.
So a submissive, or I guess I've heard the term pay pig or subordinate or whatever, you put them in the actual cage in?
Yeah, some of them do have cage. Say, for example, I would say the couple that I dominated, they had a cage. So we would put him into the cage. Or if, let's say, for example, I did have one client that had a cage, but I didn't physically put him in it. I would actually order him virtually to go in there. Yeah. But some people do. It's very rare because it's very expensive to get something really large, especially human size. But whenever someone does have a cage, it's probably some really rich white guy that has money to blow on something extremely large to fit him, for someone to throw him in it like it's a prison. Or the dungeon I work in, there's lots of cages there. So that's the thing.
I was talking to somebody earlier, and I was like, I think a lot of people shame what they actually turns them on sexually. Like they wouldn't have ladies and gentlemen, they wouldn't have categories on Pornhub if you wasn't into this stuff. Like they wouldn't have a category for BDSM or femdom or feet or foot fetish, because I've had foot fetish models up here, and that's a very lucrative.
Yeah, they can't get enough of that.
Lucrative business.
Yeah. Very.
Because I think if you think your toes and your soles and your feet are ugly, it's a man out there that's willing to pay top dollar to smell them, lick them, rub them, all types. It's crazy. It's not crazy to me. It's just like everybody has a category. So you're very open with the sexuality stuff, right? I've been watching, like I said, I tried to watch a little bit of your Twitter. I had to back out a little bit because I was at work when I was on your Twitter the other day.
Pretty intense because it's very sex work driven, where the language is really geared towards the people that are in the femdom world. That's probably going to give you your money. So typically when you're speaking on Twitter, it's like you're talking to a potential client or a potential sub for the most part, or I'm probably just educating the public around something outside of that. But that's usually how the Twitter is kind of like focused. But go ahead.
What was the weirdest situation or request that you ever gotten?
The weirdest request?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I don't even want to say anything is like too weird, but not just only from a submissive, but like any client all across the board, right? Mm-hmm. Not just. I would say, so I didn't take him as a client because I felt like his fantasy was a bit concerning. So his what's it called? He had this fantasy where he wanted me to basically peg him. Okay, so let me just keep it really raw. He just wanted me to fuck him in his ass, leave him right there, let him squall and cry, and then leave him, and then watch him, and then come right back and top him off and fucking just leave him here to just like rot. Like how you would leave like a victim if you raped them and left them in the middle of some warehouse. And I thought about it. So my thing was full kidnapping, right? So I would basically pick him up, but then he said, well, after he gets picked up, this is how he wants the fantasy to lead up to. And that was a fantasy. And I gave it some thought. And as a therapist, I just thought, this seems like wireless color. He's asking for it. I just feel like it seems like he's trying to replay something, and I don't want any parts of this because I know where it's coming from. It's giving you want to re-experience your trauma because why? I don't know, but I'm not engaging. So that might have been the weirdest. It's not really weird, but that seemed a bit too extreme for me.
Sounds a little too bit extreme. You know what I mean? Just listening to it.
So it wasn't right. I mean, I was with it, but it was just, I knew what he wanted, and I didn't want to give that to him because I know why he wanted it. I know why.
Yeah, he might need to go talk to somebody about that.
Right. Yes, precisely.
We go all across the board with this one. Let me ask a question. Had this ever affected, has your dominatrix life ever affected your like dating life, or how men usually attract you? Because I know there's men out there that's, or whoever, it's somebody that slid in the DMs and like, yeah, maybe I could take you out, X, Y, and Z. Has that ever affected your dating life before?
I want to say no. In fact, I feel like ever since I become like a dominatrix, or I completely embrace this life, dating has become like incredibly easy, right? I don't know why, who knows, but there's a lot of layers to that. But I would say no. And I think maybe because it's very separate. So I don't really, I'm very vanilla in my personal life. Yeah, I might engage in a little kink play. I think any guy before he gets into like a sexual situation with me, I might have probably like domed him for just like some type of play. But after that, for the most part, it's just traditionally like any other situation. Yeah, did I answer your question? I feel like I'm missing a part.
No, you said it hasn't affected your dating.
Yeah, it hasn't for the most part. And I think most men, they know off the rip that I am. And I think they know the nature of it. Like I don't do anything sexual for the most part. As a dominatrix, you definitely don't fuck. In fact, they never, like they don't really get to see anything. You don't get to see no fucking nipples. You don't get to see no pussy. You don't really get to see anything unless it's like serves a purpose. So let's say it's face sitting. You're probably going to see some ass, right? But your face is going to be between my cheeks, right? And I'm probably going to have some panty on because you're not touching my pussy lips, right? So it'll be something like that. Or for the most part, I think like even though I'm with a guy, I think because it's so more violent than sexual, they're okay with it. Like I'm just in a dungeon, like whipping a guy from like 6 feet distance or slapping him up. Like it doesn't really intimidate them for the most part, I believe. But I'm pretty sure there's someone that wouldn't be comfortable with it. And I just probably wouldn't be for them.
Would you date an actual sub?
I probably would if let's say we started off and then it progressed into that. Yeah, I would say, yeah, I probably would. But the only time that ever happened, it was like if it was like in a sugar baby, sugar daddy type of situation. So as a dom, like you're not a sugar baby. Well, you don't have a sugar daddy, you have a sub daddy. So basically, it's no different than a sugar daddy, except you're just doming him. The physical play or the intimacy is just mostly just a dom dynamic. Yeah.
This is very interesting. I'm sorry.
And it can progress from there. Yeah, I would say sometimes it can progress. I have not had a situation that really progressed from like just meeting a sub and it growing to there. No, it was either I probably just dated someone and I just end up like, I don't want to say turning them out, but they just end up being my sub, even though it's a vanilla relationship, but it has like sub components because there's like a lot of dom components on my part. Yeah.
Most definitely. Now, I know like a couple of months ago they made the announcement. OnlyFans said pretty much no sexually explicit content. Like you could be nude, but you couldn't have any type of penetration or would have anybody else into there. Then they changed and made the announcement that you can, because I guess they were trying to go public or whatever the case may have you. Did that affect you in any way? Was there another outlet that you're looking to put your content on?
Yeah, like I would say for my OnlyFans, I wouldn't be considered sexually explicit, but definitely sexually suggestive. So I don't engage in like the typical, I guess you can say everything from like having sex or I guess you could say like masturbation clips, anything like that explicit to that degree I don't have. But what I'll do is, let's say it's like more along the erotic lines. Like you might see me doing something more seductive with myself versus you having a clip seeking some type of release, or you're looking forward to seeing me release in some way, shape, or form, right? I am launching already on Patreon. But for me, the change with OnlyFans, I felt like was a benefit to me because it kind of gave me an excuse to not feel pressure to sell, the content that most people are going on OnlyFans for, which is technically sexually explicit. I don't really do that, but I feel like I get away with murder for the most part. And I feel like if someone is feeling me, they'll stick around and appreciate the creativity with this sexual stuff. But for the most part, it was a benefit for me. It just gave me a good reason to not have to worry about meeting some expectation around selling something explicit or doing anything I wasn't really quite comfortable with doing. And I also didn't like that because, let's say, for example, I'm not showing my clients my pussy as a dominatrix, but then they're going to fucking go online and they have access to that right there. See, it's fucking with for me, I feel like that would create some type of like conflict in the game, or it kind of like disrupt that process for the most part. Yeah, I didn't like that. because as a dom, you're supposed to be able to control them, maintain like control. And I feel like them having access to you in that degree kind of gives that up to a bit. If that kind of makes sense, we can envision that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, because put like this, imagine if he's never seen your lady parts. Mm-hmm. He can feel like he'll be more responsive and reactive to like the tease play during kink versus, let's say, for example, I'm teasing him in the session, but later on he goes, I don't know, a week later, he ends up beating off to one of my masturbation clips. He's not gonna be as reactive in my session, mm-hmm. right? It's kind of like, right, exactly. So it's too much. It fucks with the amount of control that I would be able to have over them.
Yeah. Is there such thing as too much control? Like, for instance, I had a friend a while back. She had an OnlyFans, and she was charging $8. It was like a sale, 31% off or some shit like that. And I subscribed to it, right? I paid the $8. I subscribed to it. And then every clip or picture, in order for me to watch it or view it or whatever, was $20, $10. How do you feel about that? Like, you charge for the subscription, and then when I get in there, I can't view anything outside of a 5 or 7 second clip. I haven't subscribed to your OnlyFans.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
So I personally don't like that. I've never did that. My platform was always kind of like, you pay one fee and whatever, you have access to everything, right? So my focus is always creating like music videos, but it's more along the erotic lines. And let's say, for example, I wanted to offer something that was a bit more uncensored, because it took me a while to even be topless. Like I wasn't even showing titties. I was probably I was wearing pasties, so you didn't really see any titties. And I think I might have posted like 2 pictures topless based on like that theme, and that worked well. But for the most part, I would always post like 3-minute videos, 2 to 3 minute videos. You enjoy it. But let's say it's a really big clip, and I had something a bit more uncensored, I'd probably sell it, right? Like for my birthday, I did a lot of I did a lot of content, and I posted on my page, but there was some parts that was a bit more explicit, like me being topless and me dancing in the tub. I didn't want to have that open on my page. So if someone wanted to see the more exclusive version, I would sell that to them, and that was fine. And at least I'd know who the fuck would have my shit. So yeah. That's how my stuff works. But for the most part, I like that whole thing where people are just coming to see the show. Not like they're coming for me to like, I'm gonna say rape them or take their money, because I'm gonna take it regardless. But I just wanted to come and see the show, because for me, it's really the creativity for me, right? It started off as an income thing, but at the same time, I really love what I do. So I figured, I can do this and try to find a way to monetize it. So, I had no problem with doing that.
I just want to let you people know, if you didn't get any of that, you heard you have to find something that you love and monetize it. We're not just talking about being a dom or having sex. If you want to be a comedian, find a way to do it and monetize it. She just dropped a gem right there. Just dropped a gem. What is kink therapy?
For me, kink therapy is, well, at least what I do, there's so many layers. So I'm gonna start with one, what kink therapy looks like. If I go into a couple, right, and let's say they have a sex therapist to talk about their intimacy issues, how that's different from kink therapy with me per se would be, let's say you're having issues in the actual play dynamic, right? And what that would look like is her being a dominant and him being a sub, and them having issues with trying to figure out, why do I have to be a dom for you to be a sub? Why can't you just assume the position, right? And maybe I would snap into dom space, because you're aware of like subspace and dom space. During that play, people tend to enter that space. So what I would do is kind of like watch them play or engage in the play with them, ask him questions, kind of like ask her questions, kind of mediate for the most part, and kind of explore what is the issue. Like I would say with one session where a client had like a breakthrough, he wasn't assuming the sub position because for some reason he thought that maybe she didn't want to be a dom today. But then she was just like, what are you talking about? It's a female-led relationship. I'm a dom every day. right? And then I had to explain to him, so it seems like you're waiting for validation or waiting for someone to tell you what to do. And that can be exhausting, right? You should be able to maintain your role or have enough discipline to be in your role regardless of whatever she's doing. And I felt like, you know what, maybe some days you need to carry that energy because she doesn't have the energy to assume it. And maybe if you did, it would give her the opportunity to be triggered right into dom space. And look, now you have what you want and not everyone's happy and in their role. So I would say that's what kink therapy would look like, exploring it and trying to figure out, well, why are we having this issue? Why isn't play a bit more fun? Is it traumatizing someone? You know, is someone like not being expressive enough and having their boundaries violated and not really talking about it? So it's kind of like stuff like that, what kink therapy technically is for the most part, or would look like.
It's true. What's the funniest situation you ever been in, whether it's been a dominatrix or being in kink therapy? What was the funniest? Like that thing you got to look back and be like,
I would say it was the guy maintaining a very sissy voice and calling his dom daddy. That tickles me. It tickles me. I would say that's probably like the funniest thing, and it shouldn't, but because it's so authentic and I felt that it cannot help but tickle me, right? Yeah, there was some, I would say that's probably the most funniest thing. But of course, one would probably have to hear it for themselves to be able to understand how hilarious it actually is. But it's like a really, if you see this guy on the surface, like really very macho, 6'6", really tall guy. And he's using like, yes, daddy. Like he's, yes, daddy. Yes, sorry, daddy. Like daddy has to be at the end of every sentence. Yes, daddy. Sorry, daddy. No, daddy. Like that. And then he would be like in 6-inch heels. So now we have a guy that's essentially 7 foot using that tone and saying daddy. It tickles me.
That tickled me a little bit too, because I would actually love to see that.
I love it. But yeah, that was that. I would say that's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that we kind of shame people who are into this stuff? Like a lot of people are afraid of conversations like this or actually enjoying sex, talking about sex. They think that either their partner's going to slut shame them or their partner's going to judge them or the world's going to judge them. Like I honestly think there's nothing wrong with sucking a toe. I honestly think there's nothing wrong with rimming a woman. I think there's nothing wrong with kinky sex. The whips, I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. The role play, like playing here kitty kitty or having a sex burrito. We'll talk about it another time. For you people out there that don't know what sex burrito is, now I say it right now. It's when you guys get in baby oil, you get a shower curtain, you wrap each other up like a burrito, and that's a sex burrito. Here kitty kitty, she climbs around, she starts meowing. You say, here kitty kitty. That's talking to the lady part.
So cute. Okay, that's a good one.
I think a lot of people like are afraid of it. Like we wouldn't be here if we didn't like sex. We wouldn't have Pornhub if we didn't like sex. We wouldn't have categories. Like I keep saying this, you wouldn't have a category on Pornhub if you didn't like sex. It's like so many outlets, but I think the world shames us for liking the shit that we like. I had a foot fetish model up here. I'm like, people are tuned into it. I'm like, but they're like, oh, that's nasty. You got a girl that talks about sucking toes. The Satan's Fruit Gusher episode, she talked about getting peed on. I'm like, it's out there. So do you think like people shame, or are you? I know you're not shamed because you're very open on your IG.
But yeah, people definitely do, and even if you don't see it outright, you can tell by the fact that people are hiding, because it's like, well, what if people have discovered this about me? Would they judge me? So even if people are not shaming you, I feel like people carry a lot of shame or worry around being judged. Like there are a lot. Okay, so put it like this, with my mistress application, right? It's a Google Doc, and what I love about it is the fact that it gives me a lot of statistics. So I have a big research background. So anytime I do something, I want to see like the numbers and what the stats look like. So with my mistress application, 80% of the men are into pegging. I didn't see that fucking coming. And mind you, so my thing is, if this is like, I feel like the numbers that showed up is pretty much representative of like the population, right? I think a lot of men are either curious or open or want some type of like butt play because they just want to know like, what does it mean? Even, even if I'm not into that, but I won't know unless I try. But then some men are worried about what it might imply. It doesn't mean I'm gay. I'm just like, you wanting to see what your butt does doesn't mean that you like, what does that have to do with your sexual orientation? Right. So, but anyway, educating people around that. So let's say you understand it doesn't have anything to do with your sexual orientation, but you just want to know how it feels. You might do it and realize, yeah, it's not for me. And you might realize you like it. And that's just going to be a thing for you. And then you have to then they get to a phase where they have to learn to accept that about themselves, that you like your ass played with to a degree, So for some men, I would say in order for them to accept that, it depends on the form. So some men are okay with pegging under forced circumstances. Like that's the turn on. Like they can't really get aroused by just like, come here, I'm just gonna like peg you today. No, it has to be, let's say maybe a bit more violent, like I'm punishing you. Like that'll turn them on in that sense. Whereas some men, you have to kind of groom them into it, like, play with them a bit, what's it called? Subdue them. And, it's more romantic, but it just depends. Like they're typically not outright comfortable with it in the beginning once they accept it, especially if this is their first time trying or trying to open up themselves to kink play. It takes them a little while to adjust. And that's usually the route that we go in order to get them to be comfortable with it, especially after exposure.
But isn't a man's G-spot back there in his booty hole?
It is. You guys are missing so much. And I'm just like, you know what? It's okay. But I feel like men, they miss out on so much. And I think it's because of like society doesn't give them room to like tune in with their emotions. Like society teaches men like you're not supposed to feel. And if you feel, you better like forget that you feel that and go distract yourself with something else, right? It teaches you should not enjoy certain things like your G-spot. Like, why would it be there then? Why would it be there then if you're not supposed to play with it? But society is teaching you something that makes you feel like, yeah, you should be ashamed if you want anything to do with your butt. Whatever that means. Yeah, but I just know for sure there are a lot more men that want to experiment with their G-spot there.
I think there's a lot more people that want to experiment with their sexual fantasies or sexual kinks in general.
Yeah.
I think, like I said before, I think a lot of people just don't want to be shamed. Like, it's okay. It's okay to have, in my opinion, it's okay to have one night stands. It's okay to have sex on the first date. It's okay to have sex without a date. It's okay. I don't have Netflix, but if you want to PBS and relax and get educational with it, we can do that. But I think it's okay. Right. I think it's honestly okay. You're right. The world shames us, or we got something put in us that we shouldn't even do it. But like I said, for the millionth time, it wouldn't be a category on Pornhub if people didn't watch it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask this question here before we wrap up. I asked everybody on this podcast because I am a comedian. And I actually followed you from my comedian page today because I wanted to get a little bit more insight. Top 5 comedians in any order, dead or alive.
I'm not gonna lie, I just love me some Mike Epps. I don't know what it was, but I definitely do love me some Mike Epps. I just love him. Bernie Mac, there's something that makes me feel, I mean, I know he's not with us anymore, but Bernie Mac reminds me of like home for some reason. The shit that my parents would fucking laugh at. And then I grew to understand the humor. And not really good with names. I do like Tiffany Haddish. There's something about her. There's something about Tiffany Haddish. I think who she is as a comedian is what kind of does it for me. Um, mm, no, I can't. There's this one woman. I don't know her name. She has a Netflix special. She's dark skinned. She got to be like at least 5'10". She had like that spiky hairdo.
Leslie
Have you
Jones.
seen? I like Leslie Jones.
Okay. Yeah, one more.
And there's this other, you know who I actually like? I'm just gonna have to put them together. I like the Key and Peele brothers. Like it's for them two together, between them, I just kind of like the combo. But if I had to choose between the two, it'll probably be the bald one. He's yeah.
That's Key. Michael Key. Yeah. Yeah. That show was ahead of its time when it was airing. Damn. Mm-hmm. Jordan Peele is like, if y'all ain't seen Candyman, Get Out.
He did Candyman?
Yeah, Jordan. Yes. The new one?
I never knew that. I haven't watched it, but I didn't even know. Now I gotta go. Definitely gotta go watch it. Wow. How was it? Was it good?
Yeah, we just chilling. We bullshit now. But yeah, like, like his movies have an undertone to them.
Right, okay.
So, like, I like this one because it followed the first Candyman, the second Candyman, the third one, and the fourth one. So the fourth one really had all three tied in to it. So if you saw the first one, it does start at that one, but it kind of ties in the second and the third one. Just a small fixture of the second and third one. So, so you kind of like get where everything's coming in. Cause I think the second and third one were just so horrible compared to the first one.
I didn't even know that there were that many Candybans. I only watched like one, I believe, and that was the one where with the bathroom, there's a lot of bathroom stalls in that one.
That was the first one, yeah.
Or the park. Yeah, I think that's probably the only one I've ever watched.
Yeah, definitely. So, what is your message to those that are listening that actually may want to follow in your footsteps or are just afraid to come out in the light and talk about sex? What would be your advice to those out there?
I would say just embrace who you are. The parts of yourself that you're hiding, you're running away from, like they're going to eventually catch up to you. They're eventually going to catch up to you. So you might as well be proactive and kind of like embrace that part of you and explore it, right? That'll give you some sense of control and it'll allow you to kind of express yourself in a way where you don't have to be ashamed because you're owning your shit, right? It's like when you learn to love something, you're allowing yourself permission to enjoy it regardless of whatever the fuck someone else feels. And I think everyone needs that. I think everyone needs that for the most part.
I definitely agree. And if anybody wanted to follow you, support you, how would they get in contact with you? Or how would they be able to see your content?
I would say you could find me on Instagram at Venus Feroci, and you can find my link where you can find me on all platforms at the link in my bio. I would say that's a great start.
And you guys can follow me at No ID Podcast on Instagram. You can follow my community page. I'm actually getting some more shows now since the pandemic. So you can follow that at strictly_Rome. That's also on Twitter. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, rate, tell a friend, support the No ID Podcast, and make sure that you like, share, comment, subscribe, rate, tell a friend about Venus Feroci. She found me on Instagram, which is a first because a lot of women do not look for Jerome on Instagram, which is what I told her. She found me on IG. We connected then. I told her this is a freestyle conversation, and it really went well. If you haven't walked out with anything, just walk out with the fact that she's open about everything. This is not an act. This is her 100% from what I've seen on IG. So I respect her 100%. She also told you guys find something that you love to do, you're good at it, and monetize it. So make sure you guys learn, at least take that from there, and don't be afraid of your sexuality, your kinks, whatever you like. If you like to get rimmed, ass ate, or your groceries ate, or bag, do that. You like to get your toes sucked, nipple played. You want to be dominated, fine. I didn't know anything about kink therapy, but I'm actually about to hit my old lady up now and ask her some questions. But by all means, please, 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 please support her, because she is a content creator. And we definitely need more content creators that look like us in this social media realm. And I mean, I'm not talking about influencers, content creators. She creates content for you to watch. It's pay-per-view. And be very respectful when you slide in her DMs as well. So I just want to throw that one out there too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Signing off.